We ask a lot of questions about what an AI model knows or what it believes, but what if that's the wrong way to think about it entirely? Let's try to reframe this whole thing not through philosophy, but through, well, physics. We're going to dive into the literal geometry of how an AI works, and you'll see how data doesn't just give it information, it actually builds the very world the model has to live in.
So when you or I see a word, say, doctor, our brain just ignites. We immediately think of medicine, stethoscopes, trust, all of those years of school. It's this huge web of meaning that we've built up over a lifetime.
But for an AI, it's totally different. It doesn't process meaning. It processes a location, a set of coordinates. To a large language model, a word isn't some abstract concept. It's a very specific address on a mind-bogglingly complex, multidimensional map.
So let's actually explore this map. For a minute, just forget about abstract ideas and think of this as a real physical space. It's a world made not of continents and oceans, but of billions and billions of data points, where every single word has its own specific address.
In this world, no single point, no word, lives in a vacuum. What really truly matters is its neighborhood. And we have a name for this. We call it a mathematical neighborhood. It's just a cluster of other words that are mathematically super close. So, what decides who your neighbors are? It's one thing and one thing only: shared context in the training data. Words that show up in similar sentences get pulled together.
Okay, and this is the crucial part. The model doesn't draw this map itself. The data draws the map for it. And to really see this in action, let's just take one word and watch how its location and its whole purpose inside the model can totally change.
Let's imagine we train a model on nothing but agricultural texts. Books about farming, grocery lists, that kind of thing. If we ask the model, hey, what's in the mathematical neighborhood of the word apple? It points us right here. Its closest neighbors are fruit, banana, and orchard. In this world, an apple is a fruit. Simple as that.
Okay, now let's hit reset. We use the exact same model, but we change its diet. This time, we feed it nothing but tech news, financial reports from Silicon Valley, gadget reviews. We look for Apple again. And whoa, it's moved. It's in a completely different part of town. Its neighbors are now iPhone, Microsoft, and Google. It's the exact same word, but its location and what it means to the model has fundamentally shifted.
And this really is the whole idea right here. The word Apple didn't change at all. The map did. The entire geometric structure of the model's world was completely redrawn, just by changing the data it was built on.
This is why we have to be so precise with our language. This space is not symbolic, it is geometric. It has a real shape, it has measurable distances, and a structure that is defined purely by statistics. All right, so let's take this geometric idea and apply it to something a little more complex. Instead of just looking at fruit and tech, let's see how this map can end up encoding the statistical realities of our own world. So let's go back to our first word, doctor. If we train a model on, let's say, a ton of historical text from the 19th and early 20th centuries, what do you think the neighborhood around doctor is going to look like? Well, the data from that time overwhelmingly associates doctors with men, so its closest mathematical neighbors become words like man, sir, and he. Now, it is so tempting to look at this and just label it bias, but from a purely mechanical standpoint, that's not what's happening. The model hasn't formed a belief. It has simply conducted a census. It's just reporting back the statistical facts of the data it was given. This isn't ideology. It's a reflection of frequency.
So let's see what happens when we swap the data again. This time, we'll train the model on modern medical journals, hospital websites, recent news articles. The neighborhood around doctor completely transforms. Now you see words like woman, she, surgeon, and professional getting pulled in close. The position of doctor has physically moved to a new region of the map, one that reflects a very different statistical reality.
So you look at this change, and it's easy to think, great, the model's output is more fair now. But did the model actually learn the concept of fairness?
Nope, the model didn't learn fairness. It learned frequency. The underlying mechanism is exactly the same in both cases. It's just mapping the most common associations in its new dataset. The change isn't ideological at all. It's purely statistical.
So, how does this happen? I mean, what's the actual mechanism that's physically pulling these words into neighborhoods when the model is training? Well, the process isn't conceptual, it's physical.
Honestly, the best way to think about it is like gravity. During training, the model has one single goal: get better at predicting the next word. That's it.
To do that, it's constantly adjusting the position of every single word on its map. So when two words appear together a lot, like doctor and hospital, it creates a really strong gravitational pull, yanking them closer together. But if words rarely appear in the same context, the pull is incredibly weak, and they just stay far apart.
It's all just a process of optimization, of the whole system settling into its most stable state based on the data. This is physics, not intention. There's no little conscious agent in there making choices. There's only the relentless mathematical pull of statistical patterns.
And this leads us to a really, really important consequence. There's this common idea that we can just fix unwanted outputs by giving the model better instructions, with clever prompting. But this fundamentally misunderstands the problem. The problem isn't the model's surface-level response. It's the terrain it's forced to operate on.
Let me break down why that is. When you give a model a prompt, you're essentially just giving it a starting address on this giant map. You're dropping a pin. From there, the model's job is to find the most probable path, the easiest walk to an answer. But that path is totally constrained by the terrain that already exists. It's going to snap to the biggest, busiest highway paved by the data, and that highway leads to the densest, most statistically likely neighborhood. It literally can't walk where no path exists.
Which brings us to this crucial point. Prompts operate on the surface. They can suggest a direction, sure, but the embeddings, the actual locations of all the words, they define the terrain. You can't just tell a model to teleport across a mountain range that the data itself has already built.
And this all brings us to the final, really unavoidable conclusion of this whole geometric view of the world. If the data carves the map and the map defines everything that's possible, then it all comes back to the data.
So, let's just quickly recap the big principles here. 1. Words are positions in space, not meanings. 2. These positions clump together into neighborhoods based on how often they appear together. 3. The entire layout of this world is carved exclusively by the training data. And finally, the distance between words on this map creates a hard physical limit on what the model can possibly do.
An AI cannot generate a concept that is mathematically unreachable from where it starts. It can't connect two ideas if the data never built a bridge between them. In its geometric world, those connections just plain don't exist. Which is why, in this sense, data is not just input, data is destiny.
But this brings up a pretty critical question, right? If this is all physics and gravity, are all data points created equal, or do some have a stronger gravitational pull than others? In our next explainer, we're going to dig into why some data pulls harder than others, and why, in the geometry of these models, the majority view almost always wins.